Thank you everybody for being here. I think I know everybody on the call, just in case you don't know me, I'm Liz Dobbins-Smith. I'm the managing director for NCEDA, and we are happy to have y'all here with us. We've got an hour booked for it. I don't think it'll take the full hour. This is the first time we've done this, and so we didn't know exactly how long it would take. And it's really just a time for us to share a little bit more about the fellowship program, and Natalie and Josh to share their experience hosting fellows this past summer, and to answer any questions that y'all have. And so I'd like to kick things off just going around and doing a quick introduction for everybody, so that since it's a smaller group, so that we know who we all are. Tiffany, I see that. And so Tiffany, can you want to say something just so can you hear us? You're muted. Okay. Okay, you're muted, so we can't hear you. So you might need to log out and log back in. But okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and just call folks out, and I'll just do it in the order I see y'all on my screen. So Josh, if you want to kick us off with a brief introduction.
Absolutely. I'm Josh Carpenter, director for the Mountain West Partnerships. We're a regional, cog in the West, covering everything from Haywood over to Murphy.
Awesome. Thank you. Burton.
Hey, I'm Burton Hodges. I am the Executive Director of Transylvania Economic Alliance in Transylvania County, North Carolina.
That's where I live, just for folks that don't know.
We're like a block away from each other right now.
Yeah. Yep. Natalie?
Yeah, Natalie Hawkins, president of Moore County Economic Development Partnership, home of Pinehurst.
Awesome. Monique?
Monique Wilkins with the Wake Forest Business and Industry Partnership.
Elizabeth?
Which one? There's two of us, but I'll go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Elizabeth Underwood, sorry.
I'm Elizabeth Underwood. I'm the Director of Economic Development for Stanley County, North Carolina.
All right, and Todd?
Hey, Todd Tucker. I am the Director of Economic Development for the Sanford Area Growth Alliance.
Randy?
My friend Todd Tucker. Randy Collins, I'm with the Anson.
Randy, I can't hear. I don't know if anybody else is having trouble. I can barely, like, it's kind of coming in and out, but it's really faint.
Probably a bird on the wire.
Okay. It's still coming in and out.
Sorry. Come back to me. I'll turn my.
Okay, we'll come back to you. All right. The other Elizabeth. And I don't know will you also let us know how to pronounce your last name?
Yeah, it's a pain. It's Muehlman, is how you say it. And I am with Department of Commerce, Division of Workforce Solutions.
Thank you. And Pat?
Pat Harris with the Mideast Commission, Director of Planning, Economic Development, and Community Services.
All right. Tiffany, did you get yours working?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I'm Tiffany McNeil with the town of Morrisville. So new to the town of Morrisville, old to economic development, North Carolina.
Yeah, Tiffany and I go way back to our days at Commerce. So, Carrie?
Hey, Carrie, she's the county manager for Duplin County.
Thank you, ma'am. And then Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Sharon with the Town of Clayton Economic Development Department.
Randy, do you want to try again? Now you're muted. All right, I don't know if this is gonna work, but Randy's with Anson County Economic Development. So Randy, if we keep having trouble, if you've got any questions, just type them into the chat, and I'll be sure to look at the chat to answer any questions as well. I'm going to. Oh, and then Elizabeth Underwood, I saw yours. So she's with the town of Morrisville in the Triangle area. So I'm going to just give a quick overview of the fellowship and kind of how it started and why we started it. And then I'm going to let Natalie and Josh both share a little bit about their experiences. So as y'all hopefully know, the association NCEDA founded a 501c3 NCEDA Foundation in 2020. And since then, the first phase of starting the foundation was moving our scholarship program from the association over to the foundation. And with that, and some fundraising efforts, we were able to greatly expand the scholarship program that we offer. Before the foundation was established, the association had a $2,600 budget for scholarships each year. And so we gave 3 different scholarships, one for the basic economic development course, which only only reimbursed for the actual registration of the course. And then also a Jack Irvin and Holzhauser, which were for EDI or IADC courses, but again, only reimbursed for the actual registration. Since the establishment of the foundation, we have grown not only the number of scholarships that we give out, but now they're all inclusive. And so we're able to reimburse for not only the registration, but travel, hotel meals, all of it. The second phase of the growth of the foundation was establishing this fellowship program. And so we kicked it off last summer with a pilot year, and we reached out so last year we started it and kind of handpicked the 2 different EDOs that were going to host fellows so that we could make sure we kind of got everything right on the student side. And so last year we chatted with Josh Carpenter and Natalie Hawkins. They both agreed to host a fellow, and then we still had an application process on the student side. And so we had a pretty simple Google form document that just asked a little bit of background information. They're interested in economic development, then to attach their resume, what type of graduate program they're in, when they're graduating, etc. And then we were able to match. Josh was a little bit different because he came in on kind of the backside of it, and he already had a graduate student that he was in conversation with, and so we paired them together. But this year we want to, formalize it even more, and we're going to have an application process on both sides. And so we have enough to fund 2 fellowships, or 2 fellows for next summer. So it'll be the same number of folks, and we hope that we'll be able to grow that in the future. But it will, we'll have an application process for the EDO. So on y'all's end to apply and we don't need every single detail, but we would like just kind of a general idea of the type of projects or project, if there's a specific larger project that you'd like the fellow to work on. And then we can help, kind of refine that if you're selected as we get into the application process on the student side. And so the timeline is that the EDO application is due this Friday by 5 p.m. And then we will review those next week, have a selection process, and we'll select everybody, and then we'll notify y'all that week of Thanksgiving. And then we want to finalize everything and be able to announce it at who the 2 host EDOs are at our December 5th networking luncheon in Raleigh. And so work with the 2 that are selected and finalize that. And then on the student side, the application process will open in January. Application deadline will be, we haven't selected the exact dates, but just in general, application deadline will be in February, and the fellows would be announced that by the end of February, so that y'all have plenty of time to, work and communicate with the fellow and get, all the details arranged. And then the fellowships would be in that like mid-May to mid-August timeframe. The foundation budgets about $10,000 per fellowship. Broken down, generally, we have about 7,200 that is budgeted for like hourly wages. And we did that with estimating kind of a $15 to $20 per hour range that would be determined or finalized between the EDO and the fellow. We have $1,000 set aside for to help with the housing stipend. I know in both cases last summer it wasn't needed, but we do have that set aside because we know that housing can certainly be an issue. And then we also have an additional about $2,000 set aside for just some additional benefits. The fellows last summer, we registered them and they attended the basic economic development course. They attended the annual conference in June, and we funded that for them to be there and also paid for their, like hotel and all of that. And then we were planning to also have them at the fall conference. And of course, everything got rearranged and redone because of Hurricane Helene. But we were planning to have and would like to in the future have a panel, just, like a 30-minute segment where we have the host EDOs and the fellows share a little bit about their experience, just to share with the membership, and the fellows could share a little bit about, the project that they worked on or research project, and for several different reasons. One, to help us broadcast and further promote the fellowship program, but also for those fellows to have an opportunity to present, about some of their findings and some of the work that they did. And so we would obviously pay for hotel, travel, etc., for them to be at the fall conference. And then our goal too for the program is twofold, obviously, and that's been in the overview that we sent out. But on the fellow side, it is an opportunity for them to learn more about economic development, get engaged. We call it a fellowship instead of an internship. The email I sent out this morning said it's a free intern, y'all, just to get some attention. But we want it to be more than an internship. We want them to do some meaningful work on your behalf. We want them to we want them to have a lot of experience. So we want them to be able to go to meetings with y'all and just, really, kind of get in the weeds in economic development so that they can, understand if it's going to be a good, career course for them. And then on y'all's side, it's a great opportunity to have a, graduate level student do some meaningful work for you. They've obviously got, a lot of experience already in, in their studies, and it's a good opportunity for both sides. So, with that, does anybody have any initial questions before we let Natalie and Josh kind of share their experiences, or anything that y'all want me to dive a little bit deeper on?
I do have just one kind of blanket question, which I'm sure they probably will talk about. Is this project based, or are they treated more of as an employee? Like, are they asked to do a specific project and do a report on it or something? Or is that kind of subjective depending on where you are?
I mean, it could be subjective. Both Josh and Natalie had their fellows on as employees, and so paid the taxes and all that stuff, and then sent at the end of the summer sent us the foundation an invoice, and we reimbursed for what they paid out. But I think that it is subjective. Natalie, I think, can talk a little bit more about that, because we went through, when we were going through last summer or last spring, we talked about all the different options, and I think we landed that hiring them like as an employee and rather than contract work was the best place to.
Yeah, I would definitely say, based on my research, you have to put them on as an hourly employee, period. So, but to get to the question of like one project versus day-to-day stuff, I would say in my experience, it was better for the fellow to have kind of responsibility for one project. Now, depending on how large that project is, that might consume a lot of their time or most of their time. But I will also tell you that our fellow also gave us a lot of very positive feedback on being able to also just kind of shadow us and attend closed session meetings when we're talking about incentive packages, or we had workforce development meetings with partners that our fellow would attend with us. You know, we planned an entrepreneurial summit, so we had a task force, so he got to see kind of how the task force put that program together. So there was, I would say there was some of that kind of shadowing and exposure to, you know, everyday economic development activities. But I do think that if you have a project of some sort, that it would be very beneficial to the fellow. Elizabeth.
Any other questions?
Josh, did you have the same experience?
Yeah, I agree with you, Natalie, that what we experienced was, you know, the fellow that we had came in sort of under the project heading of just process improvement, was the general bucket for everything that he was involved in. And then, like you mentioned, got involved in other things as we went along. He was actually, and still is, a very high capacity person. So I would give him a task, and he would have it done quicker than I thought, and then we would move on to other things. And so we would end up going through several iterations of that. And he was, an amazing employee. It was good to work with him.
Yeah, I think too, with the fellowship kind of title, we definitely want it to be more than coming in and doing like data entry work. We want it to be very experiential, and more in the weeds, and helping out with a certain research project that you have that you'd like to get done, or and Natalie can talk just a little bit more in a minute about what Cameron did for her, because I think that would kind of help y'all think about some things as well. We will certainly answer. We want this to be super informal, so if you've got questions throughout, just raise your hand or let us know, but we'll have some time dedicated at the end for Q&A as well. At this time, I'd like to just let Natalie and Josh share their stories a little bit. And so I would say the first question is for both of y'all is, how did your organization benefit overall from this fellowship experience? And Josh, do you want to go first?
Sure. We benefited really in the long term because Sean now works for the Southwestern Commission. So ultimately his fellowship ended up being, when leading to full-time employment. So I think, that was the big takeaway, was that we were able to retain him here at the organization, and obviously retain him in the region. That was really one of my goals kind of going into it, is that because he did not have any sort of frame of reference for economic development as a job and a career path. And so exposing him to economic development, then ultimately having him work inside an organization and then continue in the career, I thought was the right, and the path that I wanted to see him take. And so just glad to see him here at the organization. But during the fellowship, I think the biggest thing that we gained, and I say we being the Mountain West Partnership, just really added capacity to us that I didn't know exactly how that was going to work, but man, complete value add from my perspective. I mean, we were able to leverage him in so many different ways, and then continue on with that relationship even now, working inside the commission. Now he works for the community economic development planning part of the commission. I'm a different division, but again, we all help each other. So it's not like he's completely out of the picture, but the point is it's still a value add, and he still does economic development work. So it's a good thing.
Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly echo Josh's comments. It was a 100% value add for us, very beneficial. And I would say, again, it was like in Josh's situation for us, I had a very large project. In fact, it was so large that I was concerned he might not get, all the way through it. Cameron might not. And we had to work really hard to make sure that he was able to complete it in the time that we had. But that is a project, some analysis that required a lot of research, a lot of analysis, conversations with other economic development organizations. And I see, Todd Tucker's on the call. Todd Tucker met with my NCEDA Foundation fellow, Cameron. He called and asked, questions of other agencies and interviewed other EDOs. So I was able to complete a project that, I've been wanting to do for 2 years and just didn't have the capacity to do it. So if we had not had that foundation fellow, that project would not even have been started yet. So that was really kind of like the key benefit to our organization. And on a side note, I actually learned from Cameron. He taught me how to use Microsoft Forms. I'd always use a different form for surveys. So he taught me kind of how to use Microsoft Forms. He also taught me some graphic design stuff that he was very skilled in. And so, I taught him how to use pivot tables in Excel. He taught me how to use those other tools. So it was definitely a mutually beneficial experience for us here in Moore County.
Natalie, do you want to share a little bit more about what, like, the exact project that Cameron worked on for you? Because I think that would help some of the attendees
Yeah.
think about
What potential. And I like Josh's idea of process improvement. I mean, I think that is, if you just need some help, process improvement is broad enough that, that could cover just about anything, right? In terms of, your BRE program, all kinds of stuff. So I think that's a great idea, Josh, that you had for your fellow. But what I wanted to do was to evaluate whether or not Moore County should begin a shell building program. So I had Cameron research. He did a survey of all the EDOs. Some of you may have responded to that survey. So we surveyed all 100 counties. Do you have a shell building program? Are you considering one? What's it look like if you do? So he kind of accumulated and gathered all of that data. Then he went back and looked at all of our business lead data for the last 3 fiscal years and said, okay, what are our leads looking like, and what's the demand in terms of square footage, ceiling height, all of natural gas requirements, all of the metrics and the data that we track on our business leads every month. So he went through and analyzed that, and that's where he got into, I showed him how to use pivot tables, but use pivot tables to just segment the data. Say, okay, so clients looking at 25,000 square feet and below, what are their requirements? Clients looking at 100,000 to 200,000 square feet, what are their requirements, right? And so, we kind of he pulled all of that data together. He looked at what is being, what kind of programs there are across the state, came back with a great recommendation to create an incentive policy to incentivize the private sector to develop shell buildings. Ultimately prepared a 20+ page report with maps color coded, every county color coded. They do have a program in place. They don't, or they're considering it. He evaluated the industrial or business park site acreage in all nine surrounding counties, did a map of that, compared how many acres of business park sites we have relative to those, and just did a tremendous job at pulling together all of that data together and all that information, and then putting it in a final, very professional, polished report that, I helped, in terms of formatting. And then he also had the opportunity on his very last day to present his report to our executive committee. So, he was standing there in front of the CEOs of the largest companies that we have here. And he presented the report, presented the recommendations and findings, and I think left very satisfied that he had kind of like his own project, his own baby. It was all, it was all his. And so that's kind of what Cameron worked on.
Josh, do you want to share anything about like any specific things that Sean worked on, or if there was any like, bigger piece that he helped y'all with?
Yeah. So like I said, Sean's sort of the big bucket, or the large heading was process improvement. It was apparent from talking to him initially when we started looking for, someone to come into this capacity. He was one high capacity person and had been dealing with process improvement, throughout his career. He's a former Army veteran, and then he's also he left the Army and then became a pastry chef. All very much process oriented. So at the end of the day, I said, "Hey, how about you help?" And that's what he's studying in school at Western. And so I said, "Why don't you help us, figure things out and help us to do two things. One was process inside Salesforce and how we track and manage things. The second thing was just process with our interactions with clients. So BR&E clients mainly, and then some recruitment. So getting a handle around both of those processes, and then helping us ultimately get a better handle inside our tracking software with Salesforce. And so he did both those things and a bunch more that I just kept, because he was, like I said, he was on fire and just working through stuff all the time. And so I just kept throwing things at him, and he kept producing results, and we just kept rolling. And then ultimately he did all that documentation and kind of keeping up with those reports and helping us to work through a lot of those two things. But like I said, those were the two main headings, like Salesforce and then customer process improvement.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I'd say, Josh, this doesn't really apply to you as much, but Natalie, could you share, like, how was the process of, like, when we were doing the matching? Did you feel good about that? I mean, and we made sure that Natalie had a say in it and got to meet with Cameron and everything. And so just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, happy to share that, Liz. Of course, I thought it went very well because it worked out extremely positively for me. But no, the way the process worked is we kind of wrote up a summary of the project that we had for the fellow, or kind of like what would the fellow could expect during the fellowship. And so we kind of presented that to the foundation, and then the foundation accepted the applications. But we were we were allowed to interview all of the fellow applicants, and just get to meet them virtually, through a Zoom meeting like this, where we asked them questions, got to know them about what their background, their skill set is, what they're interested in the most. Fortunately, in my situation, Cameron looked at my job, I'll say job description, my project description, and said, I want to be in Moore County, so he specifically said, if I had to go here or here, I want to go here. So that worked out well for me, because his background, his undergraduate background is, geography, planning, GIS kind of stuff. And his previous internship experiences, so we had their resume that we could look at and see what their previous work experience is, was all kind of aligned with my need for a lot of data analysis, and the fact that he had the mapping and the GIS capabilities and could do some of that was very useful. So I looked at their skills. They looked at our project, and I mean, in our case, it was a perfect match. There was plenty of time for that to occur as well. So, I thought it worked out pretty well for me.
And it was, last year we were just, kind of trying to figure it out as we went along. So hopefully this year it'll be, a little bit smoother. Not that it wasn't, last year, but we were able to, tweak a few things. The main piece of that I want to get across is that y'all will, if you're selected as a host, a fellow host, you'll be able to meet the candidates in advance, and it's a more of a matching process and not just an assignment. Both the students will also get, kind of say so and make sure that they're comfortable with it. But it's much more of a matching process than anything else.
Liz, do you want me to talk about my experience on how we found Sean?
Yeah.
I thought it was a pretty great story. So I reached out to our friends at Western Carolina University and said, hey, I'm looking for someone that can go into this program or work with us. And I said, who is really sort of, when I was reaching out to professors, so professors at the graduate school, at the business graduate school, and I said, kind of not really who's your top student, but who's your top student? And Sean's name came up. He had just won an award from the dean and the dean of the college, and then also another something along the way. And so he, his name rose to the top, and talked to him, and hit it off, and things went smashingly from there on out.
Yeah. And so just so that y'all kind of better understand kind of how last year went, we had initially identified Moore County and Burke County, and Alan Wood had come up with a project proposal, and we ended up having 3 students apply, 2 that we interviewed, and that the Cameron, Brown, and Moore County match was like, I mean, it's like the dating game. Like, we were on the Zoom call, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly how this is going to go. It was just so obvious that Cameron was so interested. Like, he and Natalie just kind of like meshed on the Zoom call. And then the other student was interested in the Burke County opportunity, but ended up selecting something outside of what we were offering. And then Alan, and then we kind of talked internally about kind of how we wanted to move forward with that. Alan said that he had a bunch going on, so he just said, don't worry about it. We're gonna, kind of push this for later. And then I started chatting with Josh, and he was like, we're actually like talking about trying to get an intern, but we didn't know exactly how it was going to be how we were going to fund it, but we need the help and all that stuff. So that kind of happened organically as we were trying to figure out, because we wanted to have 2 different fellowship opportunities last summer in that pilot year to kind of see how it worked. So just FYI, that's how kind of all that happened. And then I guess the other question I have is if either of y'all have like any advice for the folks that are interested, and when you're like kind of thinking about like as they're thinking about like a specific project, or maybe 2 like smaller projects, but kind of as they're thinking about what the fellow might work on. Natalie, do you have any advice you'd like to share, or just any advice?
Yeah, and I have some just general advice if you are selected as one of the host agencies that I'll offer. And I will also offer to personally talk with any of you after the call. If you want to, give me a call, please do. But, I think for what I experienced is, I was pretty, like I said, I was pretty hopeful in created a very large project. I mean, it was a lot of work, and having a project management certification, I knew that I was going to have to break this project down into multiple smaller pieces in order for him to get through it, because he did not have that economic development background, right? He is, in his 20s. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but he's not as old as I am, and he hasn't had my experiences, right? So I really had to give a lot of thought to, okay, what is he really going to be capable of doing versus what on this project am I going to need to step in and help, kind of support. So that was kind of one thing. So maybe don't be so aggressive in as big a project as I did, because I mean, we were literally every week like, we had tasks broken down like you've got to have this done by Thursday. This has got to be done by next Tuesday. Like the only way we're going to get this report out the door before you have to leave us is if we really stick to all of these interim milestones that we had to create. And I think that caused a little bit of pressure for him, and, but he's a hard worker, kind of, Josh, like, like your fellow. I mean, it was like the work just churned out. I mean, he really did, produce, a lot of work for us. So that would be kind of my advice is, make sure it's a reasonable project. Make sure it's something that could realistically get completed in that time frame of May to August. And I will also point out, Josh, I don't know if you had this experience or not, but it is summer. There, he was in between graduating ECU and going to Chapel Hill for his, master's program. So, he needed time off. He was on the board of governors for the school. He was a student representative. So he needed time to go to those meetings, in the summer. So as you're thinking about the project too, just be sure to plan for like a little bit of time away from the office for the fellow. So I have other thoughts, but I'm going to pass the mic to Josh and let him share some stuff, and I can chime in a little more.
No, thank you for that, Natalie. I the same experience in the sense that I was not as focused as you were. It sounds like you got a much better handle on what you wanted him to do early on. I was looking at what we were doing as an organization and sort of had a running list of things, and I just sort of said, hey, that fifth thing on the list that I can't get to ever because the other things rise to the top or something else happens. I said, that's really where I want you to focus. And that's what pushed, sort of the whole effort forward was, the things I just can't really, start to knock out. And again, it just kind of snowballed from there. We just started doing more process stuff and it just kind of kept rolling. And to your point, also about the, just kind of having an eye towards how to manage things. It worked out really well in terms of time management. Yeah, Sean was on kind of a hybrid schedule with us, so we 3 days in the office, 2 days kind of out at home or wherever, working hybrid. Because to your point, he was very very much involved in his school. I mean, school didn't stop. He was doing other things and has a home life too. So at the end of the day, he was a very busy person and continues to be because he's still in graduate school, but obviously, very capable and managed his time very well.
And I would say to touch on what Natalie said, just with that, and Josh, just about scheduling. The other piece of that is that the fellowship includes the basic economic development course. So that week, whenever that is, which is typically that first full week in August, but now they've been moving it back a little bit because this year it was like that last week in July and like only one day in August. But whether that's that last week in July or first full week in August, that would they would hopefully be in Chapel Hill for the basic course.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that was really what attracted Sean to the position in a lot of ways, was that offering of the basic economic development course. He was very interested in doing that. So
yeah. I would say in terms of like if you're selected as an EDO to host a fellow, there were a couple of things that I did that I just kind of like to pass along to you that Cameron said was very helpful for him. Before he started, I put together a kind of what to expect on your first day email for him. So just like you would onboard any new, employee, I literally treated him like a new employee that I was onboarding. So, I mean, it was, where do you park your car? When you get to the office, what's our attire? When do we take lunch? Kind of just general kind of stuff like that. Like you got to bring your social security card and all these IDs so we can get your paperwork done. So that was really helpful. And then I also created like an onboarding checklist. Like, okay, what are all the things that I want him to be aware of? Like, okay, I need to go over who's on our board because you're going to be, sitting in on our board meetings. And so I made like a little onboarding checklist of information that I wanted to communicate with them. So that was helpful. The other thing I was saying, Josh, I would expect you had a similar experience, is you do have to make yourself available because they will have questions.
Yeah.
They will have questions. And at one point in time, one staff member had questions, the other staff member had questions, Cameron had questions. I mean, and they started joking like, okay, we're in the doctor's office. Who's next? Like it was just like a rotating door in my office one morning for me
Yeah.
just trying to answer everybody's questions. Josh, did you have that same experience?
Yeah. So I have another person that works with me, and she does BR&E, and so to that point, we had kind of days all in the office together, and those days were like you're saying, they were just we were just peppered with questions and just coming up with things. But I liked your idea about the onboarding email. I took a little different approach. I basically had kind of the same thing, like, hey, this is when we show up, this is when we take lunch, this is what the attire is, and a basic conversation with him right before he started. But then I had him shadow myself for a week. So he was in the office with me. He shadowed myself, like I said, and then the next week he shadowed my person that does BR&E stuff, and so he got flavors of both, kind of aspects of work, and so that really kind of, I think, kind of helped him level set what was going on and understand, there's the foundation of economic development in a lot of ways. And then we, as he kind of progressed in that knowledge, we started to do the more project-based stuff. And again, it didn't take him long. I mean, super smart guy. So it just took him a little bit. He was off the races.
Yeah. In hindsight, I would have done a couple of things differently. I would have done what you said you did, Josh. I would have had the initial be a little bit more of a shadowing type experience. Because the project that I had was so large, Cameron did not get the BRE experience that I really had hoped that he would have. And that's the only feedback that he gave me, is that I wish I could have, there would have been enough time to do that. So that was kind of one thing. The other thing that I, in hindsight, wish I had done early on in the fellowship was just get in the car and tour the community. Like literally just drive him around. I mean, we have 11 towns in Moore County. That's a lot of different municipalities that are all very different, but that, in hindsight, I wish I had done that. I mean, I drove him around to a few places, but there wasn't enough time for me to be able to get him all over.
I didn't do that intentionally. So I wish I could tell you now that yes, that was oh yeah, Josh, you planned that, and that was so much of an intention. Didn't do that at all. We kind of an impromptu tour of Bryson City and Cherokee together in the same day. And I think that was one of Sean's best experiences, because he met with local businesses, he met a few, other people and other economic developers, and we got to visit some cool places, and it was the height of summer, so there was tons of tourists, and it was just fun for him. And so that, I think, was probably one of the better experiences, to your point.
He'd done the interview, so he heard of a bunch of the businesses that we think that's.
So Eli, who works with me, they're like, oh yeah, tell her that we did data entry on all that other stuff that we did. And so with Bryson City and Cherokee, all the businesses we met with, he got to do all the data entry side. So yeah.
Nice. What questions does anybody have about just kind of in general, or any questions kind of down in the weeds about, kind of more detailed?
I have a question. And I know we talked about the foundation is covering the cost of the fellowship, but were there any additional costs for the EDOs?
For me, there was. We bought an extra laptop, because we only had 3 people, so we bought an extra laptop. So now it's just actually, I got a brand new laptop and I passed my laptop. I just didn't retire my other laptop. So there was a little bit of expense as it related to, just setting up the desk space. Just because we didn't have an empty spot for them to sit. Other agencies may very well, but we didn't. So
yeah, our department is new, and so we're about 5 weeks old. So
wow.
Yeah, Wake County have been doing, handling economic development for Morrisville,
Huh.
forever. Them in the chamber, so, yeah, that's the reason why I asked that question.
Mhm.
From a standpoint, we're still figuring out the budget for this year and for next year, so.
Yeah, we cover our indirect costs, Tiffany. So we know the
Mhm.
commission operates under an indirect cost model. And so, the fellowship paid for, benefits, time, all those things, salaries, all that stuff. And then additional costs like going out, traveling, doing all that. But we covered the indirect portion of that, employee cost.
Okay.
I mean, but for us, I mean, we have an extra
Yeah.
laptop set up. I have an extra workstation. So I'm in a position now, I need some help on marketing and communication. So, I've got myself set up so I can work with the local community college to get some other, temporary help in here as well now that I wouldn't have had set up otherwise. So
Yeah. No, it was a great experience in terms of the funding. It did everything we wanted it to. So.
And we can work on that too. In both instances last summer, they just waited and we reimbursed at the end of the summer. But if you're in a position where we needed to reimburse, like once kind of in the midway point and then again at the end of the summer, we could certainly certainly do that too. It is on a reimbursement model though. But we could kind of work with y'all to figure out what's best there.
And remind me again the amount.
Sorry, I was coughing. What was the question?
And you said it's 70, how much did you say it was each fellowship?
We budget $10,000 per fellowship. And it's about 7,200 to cover wages.
and FICA taxes. So it covers the wages and the employer FICA taxes.
Gotcha.
I will say this too, thing about housing, because if in our situation, we were fortunate in that one of our board members had an unused carriage house, 1-bedroom apartment, and they offered that resource for the fellow for free. So, otherwise, $1,000 housing allowance it would be hard in this area to find something in that range. So, housing is important. And if you have any connections, resources, friends, things like that, board members that can help find housing. Our fellow Cameron said that was very, very helpful.
Josh, was your fellow local?
Local-ish. Our office is in Silva. So that's, near Cullowhee, near Western Carolina. But Sean lived near Asheville. He was about 45 minutes from the office, and he was used to the travel because he was traveling over here for for his graduate program. So, that's consideration is I think that's a good point that Natalie makes about housing, because that's an issue here too. If we hadn't found someone that was local, it would have been tougher to do.
And we know that $1,000 may or may not cover, but I mean, it's at least there to help. And like Natalie said too, that, I mean, hopefully it might work out that you're, matched with somebody that lives locally already and housing isn't an issue. Or you could, kind of with the different relationships you have in the, in the community, able to figure something out, or somebody that does have like a VRBO that's willing to let, y'all use it for the summer, or for that, 10-week period. And then also, like Josh said, to do it. And I know Natalie did this a little bit too, with a kind of a hybrid model, because the US Open happened during Cameron's fellowship. And so think that, their board
Yeah.
members are like, yeah, you can use it, but not during the open.
The week of the US Open. But I will say this, Josh, you mentioned something about, going downtown, so when all the tourists and stuff, we did try to have fun too. And so, I gave Cameron, and he brought a friend, tickets to the US Open, and Secretary Sanders was there, so I introduced him to her, and I mean, and it just made his day. I got his picture with, he was like, I can't believe this is my life right now. Like, this is so exciting that I'm getting to do this. So I think that's a good point too, is do some fun stuff too, go out to lunch together, if there's an event or something after work, just trying to make them feel welcoming and a part of the community, I think is important.
Any other questions?
I may have missed this earlier on, but Liz, can you speak a little bit about the selection of fellows? Like, who are the types of individuals that you guys are attracting into this program?
Mostly MPA students. Josh, what was Sean was not MPA. He was
yeah, business administration and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, we've got but because of Pat Mitchell at Appalachian, we've got a really good communication with all the MPA directors across the state. And so that's who we mainly reached out to, but we had some other ties with a couple of the MBA programs as well. But just to let them kind of share our application with their students.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? And like Natalie said, Josh, I'll put Josh on the spot. I'm sure he'd be okay if folks call him too, or shoot him
absolutely
with any questions. But if y'all think of anything after this afternoon or tomorrow Friday, if y'all do decide to apply, and as you kind of get in the weeds of it a little bit, have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the three of us, and we'd be happy to help.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would just add to that, I highly encourage you to apply. I mean, it was very beneficial to our organization. It relieved a lot of, like you said, the things on the list that you can't get done, right? To be able to get some of that checked off the list was very rewarding. And there's plenty of time between now and May, to get everything pulled together. So.
Right. I think for the application process, it doesn't need to be, I think, and Natalie, we had included your overview on the application process this year, just to give folks a general idea of, kind of what that looked like. We don't need that much detail, but I mean, we do need a general idea of, kind of what you're thinking.
Liz, are you saying I'm detailed?
I am. I know you've never been told that before.
Oh, that's the pot calling the kettle black.
So, all right. Well, thank y'all very much for joining us today. I'm glad that y'all are interested in the program. And again, reach out if y'all have any additional questions.
Please do.
Thanks,
all right,
guys.
thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
everybody.
All right. Bye, y'all.